Hey there. Okay, so what we're going to hear now is an account of a hunter who ran into a couple of Bigfoot and had kind of a tragic occurrence happen, and also a very strange thing happen afterwards. Now, this interview, I believe, happened in 2013. The incident itself happened in 2003, I'm pretty sure. And whatever the case, it can no longer be found on video on YouTube anymore. Not that I can find, or anywhere really. It's a fascinating account. It's clear this guy is telling the truth. You're going to want to stick around and hear it. It's well worth it. I'll interrupt a little bit here and there to make a little bit of commentary. And you'll see in the background, or on the video, that I've included various video footage from videos that prove the existence of Sasquatch using mathematical measurements and other various techniques, as well as just interesting clips and whatnot. So that's just to entertain your eyes while you listen, but the story is entertaining enough. Enjoy it. It's well worth it.
Sighting, and tell us about your sighting.
My sighting happened 10 years ago. It'll be this Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, 10 years ago in 2003. I'm in the Tazewell County, Virginia area, and the sighting occurred at somewhere around 1 o'clock in the evening, and I'm an avid bow hunter, and I enjoy bow hunting for deer, and I had pictures of a nice 12-point buck with a peculiar rack on a trail camera, and he had a drop on one side, which is rare around here. So I had showed it to a buddy of mine that hunted on the ridge over from where I hunted, and told him about the buck, and he said, "Yeah, I've got that same buck on camera." And I said, "No, I won't use his name, but I said I've got he's got the same deer on his trail camera." I said, "No, there's no way you got that buck on camera, because at the top of the ridge, for almost a mile in both directions, is about a 30-foot sheer cliff. So the deer couldn't cross there. And, it would be impossible for the deer to get across the ridge." And I said, "No, there's no way." He said, "Well, I've got the pictures I've shown." See? So he shows me his pictures from his trail cam, and yes, it's the same buck. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, well, there's got to be a cut somewhere in the cliff that they're crossing. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna find that cut in the cliff, and I'll be able to set up on that cut, and hopefully catch him going through the cut one day, and be able to kill the animal. So I went out. We had snow the day before Thanksgiving, about 3 or 4 inches on top of the mountain. It was probably about 5 or 6 inches, but then the snow kind of tapered off toward the bottom of the mountain. And I had got on my four-wheel and went up to the top of the ridge there. And when I go in the woods, I always carry a rifle with me whenever I'm not bow hunting. I carry a 243 rifle with me. And I got off, parked the four-wheel, and got off the four-wheeler, and made about, I don't know, went maybe 30 or 40 yards away from the four-wheeler. And, excuse me, on the four-wheeler trail, I see quite a large human-looking footprint. And I just see one. So I'm looking at that footprint, and I just see one footprint, and I'm looking around, someone playing a joke, a prank or something, what in the world is a pretty good-sized human footprint in the snow here? And I could only see one. So I looked at it for a couple minutes, and kind of just shrugged it off like, just an anomaly in the snow or something. Maybe an owl come out of the tree and caught mice in the snow or something that just made it look like a footprint. But, I was just trying anything to explain it away from being a footprint. So I took maybe 3 more steps down the four-wheeler trail, and I happened to look on the bank on the other side of the four-wheeler trail, and I see a second footprint. And I realize it's the opposite foot from the first footprint. So I'm like, well, that's strange. So I went back to the original footprint, and I marked it off. It was 3 of my strides to the second footprint. And the second footprint wasn't a whole footprint. It was just the toes and the ball part of the foot. So I looked ahead 3 more strides, and I could see then in the snow the trail of speaking of footprints. So I'm like, this is awful odd. So I'm like, who is up here barefooted in the snow? You know, it's 15 or 20 degrees. Now, what is someone doing up here? You know, I've hunted this area for 10 or 12 years and never had ever run across a person in the woods. Nothing. So I'm like, I'm going to follow these, footprints and see who it is. So I follow them for probably approximately 100 to 150 yards. And it's winter time, so there's no foliage on the trees. All there is there's some laurel thickets that are still green. So I get to close to a laurel thicket, and I can see that the strides have shortened quite a bit. They're not near as long as they were when I first found them. They're only about a stride and a half of mine now in between the footprints. So I'm coming up on this laurel thicket, and I get within about 30 to 40 yards of this laurel thicket, and I hear a pretty heavy grunt. And I'm like, that's a darn bear. That's got to be a bear, because I've heard bears, grunt and snap their teeth when they're angry and stuff. I was like, that's just a darn bear, So I took my rifle off my shoulder and engaged the shell, and got within probably 25 yards of the thicket, and I could see something in the thicket moving a little bit. It wasn't moving a lot, but I could see it looks like its upper body was moving, but not the lower part of the body. And where it was at in the thicket, I couldn't get a real good look at it, so I started moving around to the left of the thicket, and it was hard to take me back to that day. Kind of rough. And when I did, it grunted again at me, and now I'm within probably, I'm pretty darn close. I realize I'm too damn close, for a bear, and I'll put the rifle up, and I'm going to go ahead and, shoot it. So I'll pull the rifle up, and I'm getting ready to shoot, and I hear something to the left of me, and it sounded like something like a bear climbing a tree. I mean, it sounded like something that was really grabbing the bark of a tree. And I looked to my left, and I thought that it was a cub that was with maybe this sow or this bear, and had ran up his tree. So I swung around to the left to look, and looking dead at me at about 30 yards is about a 5.5 foot tall, hairy man. That's all I can say. And he's got one arm, he's about maybe 15 feet into the tree, somewhere in that ballpark, and he's in a V part of the tree. And he's got his right arm is wrapped around part of the tree, and his left arm is out. And I can see his whole chest and legs, and he's only holding on to the tree with one arm. And he's got one foot in the V of the tree, and his left foot is kind of just pushed against the tree. And I can see this individual as plain as day. And he's black, black fur, long hair on him. And I mean, I almost mean, it made me, I was so scared that I came close to vomiting. I mean, it scared me that bad. So, at this time, I look back to the laurel thicket. I'm backing up away from this tree and the laurel thicket. I realize that something is telling me that you're in a bad situation. And, your instincts or your second sense or whatever you want to call it is telling you need to back out of this situation. So I'm easing back, and about that time, the big one, which was in the laurel thicket, which I thought was a bear, stands up, and it's a male. And the one in the tree, I assume, is a female. Because it didn't have what I would say big breasts, but I didn't see any genital, male genital to it. But you could see somewhat of an enlarged breast. But it was hairy. It was hairy, enough that everything wasn't that visible on the body. Well, the one in the laurel thicket stands up, and when he stands up, the laurel thicket's probably 8 foot tall, and when he stands up, his head is above the laurel thicket, and he's looking dead at me. And I'm easing back, and he's actually closer to me than the one in the tree is. So I'm backing up. Well, the one in the tree grunts at me. Well, when he grunts at me, I throw my rifle up and put the scope right on its chest, center mass of the chest. And I click the safety off and I let it go and busted it right in the chest. Well, when I hit it in the chest, it didn't fall out of the tree, but it came out of the tree. And when after I shot it, I turned and started to run. And as I start to turn, I turn around and look because as I turn, I have ejected that shell, and I'm putting another shell in it because I think that I'm going to have to fire at the big one. And I turn back and look. Well, the big one is kicking the small one off the ground. And I can't believe my eyes, what I'm seeing. And it's just, so I turn around and I'm seeing this big one pick it up, the small one up, and it picks it up like it's a rag doll. I mean, grabs it by its arm and just picks it up like, and this thing probably had to weigh 500 pounds. The big one, I would guess weighed 800 pounds, 900 pounds maybe. It was just a beast of an animal. Shaquille O'Neal don't have, it looks like a kid to this thing. So I turn, I see it, and I'm still wanting to get the hell out of there, And it turns and picks that one up, and it starts toward the rock cliff, the sheer cliff at the top of the mountain. And this big one, grabs this rock cliff with one hand and picks itself and I don't know if it's its mate or a sibling or I don't know what it is, and carries them both up this sheer straight rock cliff like he was, almost like he was flying. It was like he didn't even have no effort to it. Just went straight up this 30-foot rock face, in a matter of 5 seconds. I don't know if it was 5 seconds. Well, I'm turning the other direction, and my ass is, I'm hauling tail. back toward the four-wheeler, which I'm only about, at the time I was probably only 150 yards away from the four-wheeler, something like that. And I run as fast as I can to the four-wheeler, and I keep looking back over my shoulder, wondering if this thing is going to come. And get to the four-wheeler, don't even bother. I mean, I've got the gun in my hand the whole time. Start the four-wheeler up, and I never saw it again. Never saw it again.
Well, do you think that you actually killed the smaller one?
I know that it took a 243 round straight to the chest. I know that it took that round straight to the chest. I mean, when I pulled the trigger and saw if you hunt a lot, when you shoot an animal, you will actually see the dust that comes off of an animal when you shoot it.
Correct.
And I saw the impact of the round straight to the chest. I just center mass of just below the neck, center mass, and it went to the ground. Well, I mean, I know that I hit the animal because there was blood. After I get back home, I don't live very far from where this happened. I get back home and I couldn't. It just tears me up talking about it now. I mean, it's been 10 years ago, and I never told my wife, none of them at the time, nobody, because I thought nobody would believe me. Who's going to believe that that someone just shot a Bigfoot, what you're calling a Bigfoot? They're going to mock you, it was just a big bear, especially up in a tree. It was a bear, and I'm just trying I'm grappling with the realization of what had just happened. And I was shaking, and eventually when I finally stopped, I did. It caused me to vomit. It was my nerves, the adrenaline that I had. It caused me to vomit. I vomited when I finally stopped the four-wheeler and got back to the house. And didn't go in the house for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. I sat out in the garage and just sat on a 5-gallon bucket and I just replayed it in my mind what had just happened. So after about an hour and a half, I went in the house. My wife was, she visibly saw that I was upset. She's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I just had something happen in the woods. Saw some stuff that didn't think was right or whatever." And she's like, "What was it?" And I was like, just probably a bear. Just didn't want for her to say, that's not what you saw, or that's not what really happened. So I didn't really engage my wife in conversation over it. I just, kept it inside for a couple hours, and then finally I sat down and watched TV, and I ended up taking a shower. And I finally told my wife, I said, "Honey, I got to tell you what really happened." And she's like, "What happened?" And I told her what happened. And she said, "Well, I think you need to call a game warden and report it in case it was a bear." I said, "Yeah, you're right. I probably need to do that." So I called the game warden and told the game warden that what had happened, and I told him that I didn't think that it was a bear. That I was pretty damn confident that it wasn't a bear. It wasn't. It wasn't in my mind. There was no confusion. I know what bear look like. I've killed about 10 or 11 bear in my hunting in the time in the woods. 20 or 30 deer, bobcat, coyote. I know what the animals are here in this area. And what I saw that day, the day before Thanksgiving on 2003, was not a damn bear. Was not a bear. And I don't care what anybody says. The people can mock, make fun, say I'm lying. I don't care what they say. I know what I saw on the day before Thanksgiving of 2003.
What did the fish and game? What did the fish and game say to you?
Well, the fishing game, I'll say this is where it comes strange.
Okay.
And this is why I really haven't, the part of the Bigfoot part of it is strange, but this part became even stranger. Called the fishing game, and they said, listen, we'll send a game warden now. They'll probably be tomorrow before he's there. I said, okay. So he shows up the next day about, it's Thanksgiving Day. And he shows up Thanksgiving Day around noon, because we just got done. We'd ate a early lunch before we was going to our Thanksgiving dinner. He shows up, and he's not happy that he's here at my place on Thanksgiving. So he's like, "Buddy, let's get this done. I want to be home with my family too." I'm like, "Okay, it's what happened." I told him the story. Well, he starts writing down at first, and he's writing stuff down. And when I tell him about that, it's two of them, and that I believe it was a Bigfoot, he just stops writing, takes his notebook paper that he has, and just wads it up. I don't have time for this stupid shit. I won't be home with my family. You probably saw a bear. We get these reports all the time that people think that these things are out there. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, buddy, if that's what you think, it's fine with me. I said, I just wanted to make the report that I had shot an animal, in case another hunter finds something dead in the woods that I shot, and I have a bear tag, and that I can tag the animal if someone recovers it. So he's like, well, where did this happen? I said, it's up the mountain, probably about a mile up the mountain. He said, well, would you take me up there on your four-wheeler? I said, not a problem. He said, was there blood? I said, I don't know if there's blood. I said, but when I shot the one in the tree, my ass was headed the other direction. I put the round in it and turned around, and all I done was turn around long enough to see the other one coming out of the thicket and pick the other one up, and then walk straight up a sheer cliff. I mean, just climb up a sheer cliff that no man without climbing equipment could go up, and much less carrying another individual that weighed at least 500 pounds up this cliff of 30 to 35, 40 feet straight up. This ain't a slope. This damn thing is straight up. And he's like, well, let's go. Take me to it. So we get on the four-wheeler and we get up there, and we stopped in the exact same location that I had stopped when the incident happened. And I showed him the footprints. He said, well, let's look, where did these prints come from? And at the time, I didn't think about where they were coming from. I was wondering where they were born. So we tracked them back to where they had come from. And we went down the mountain, and finally the snow ran out, and it got into quite a bit of mud. And you could definitely see in the snow you could see them, but in the mud, these things were just beautiful. I mean, they were absolutely great footprints. If someone wanted to cast them, those were the casts to make a cast out of. And the game warden's like, this ain't right. This ain't right. So he said, let's go back up. Let's go back up to where you shot this. Show me where you shot the animal. Like, okay. And I didn't have a firearm with me when we went. And I said, sir, do you mind, could you make sure you have a loaded weapon? I said, if we run across another one of these things, I said, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm unarmed. He said, don't worry about it. It's not what you think. I'm like, okay. So we hiked back up, and we followed the trail of the footprints. That's where the little thicket was at in the tree, and there's blood all over the ground in the snow. There's a good probably two or three puddles of heavy maroon, and it looked like long blood in the snow. And I'm like, see, I shot an animal here, but without doubt, I shot an animal. Well, he takes out a baggie that he has, and he's got a little thing around his waist, and he pulls out like a Ziploc baggie, and he takes a handful of the blood in the snow, and he turns the bag inside out and grabs the snowball full of blood in the snow and seals it up and puts it in his back in his little sack there. And he said, well, show me where they went up the cliff, because you couldn't see because there was actually so many footprints. I guess where the big one had come out of the little thicket and kind of maybe it looked like that the other one had been drugged a little bit in the snow before it actually picked it up and climbed up the cliff with it. It looked like it had drug it, its feet had drug in the snow. It was like a skid in the snow. So we walked over to the cliff, and there was blood on the cliff, and there was actually looked like 4 fingers that were handprint on the rock, that was blood, and you could see it pretty good. And he ended up taking a picture of that. He had a camera that he took a picture of that, and then we couldn't climb over the mountain. I mean, it's a sheer cliff, and I said the damn thing went straight up this. And he's like, well, there ain't no bear that can climb that. I said, you're not telling me nothing that I don't already know, sir. I don't want to sound like a smartass here, but I know what I saw, and I know what I shot was not a damn bear, He's like, well, okay, if that's what you say, I believe you. I believe you. He said, you look pretty distraught and adamant that this is what happened. I said, well, I know what the hell happened. I don't have to prove it to you. If you believe me, that's fine. If you don't believe me, that's fine. That's your prerogative, your opinion, whatever. But I know what I saw. So he's like, well, take me back to my truck. He said, if anyone recovers a bear, we'll let you know. I'm like, okay. So we come back off the mountain, and he gets in his truck and leaves. He said, there may be someone else contact you over this. I said, from Fish and Game? He said, there may be another government agency that contacts you. I said, okay. And he said, who are they with Fish and Game? And he said, no, he said, there'll just be another government agency. He said, they'll introduce themselves if they show up. I'm like, okay. So, which I thought was strange. He never left his card with me. Nothing. He leaves. So, probably it goes maybe a week or 7 to 8 days, something like that goes by. And I have a shop here in town, and 2 individuals show up at my work and ask to speak to me, and whether they're in a government licensed minivan, and they said we need to speak with you, and I was like, well, what's this concerning, and they said, well, it's over the incident with the game warden. And I said, okay. They said, do you have somewhere private that we can speak? And he said, we'd personally like to go to your residence and speak to you. I'm like, okay. I was like, well, it's almost quitting time. You can just follow me home. So I said, just give me about 30 more minutes, and y'all can follow me home. So I finished up my shift, and they followed me home, which was 3 or 4 miles from my work is where I live. And they get out of the car, and they said, they called me by my name and said, we need you to recount what exactly happened to you on the day before Thanksgiving. I said, okay. So I go through the whole thing. And one of the gentlemen was a clean-cut gentleman, had a suit and tie on, nice and polite. The other individual was a very large man, probably 6'8" or better, and he did not look like someone that would work for the government. He had long hair, kind of a scruffy beard, didn't look clean shaven. Wasn't clean shaven at all. Didn't look like a government employee would look. So the smaller guy, he gets done asking me the questions, and I tell him the whole story about what happened. And then the larger man says, well, do you you really think that you saw was a Sasquatch? He didn't say Bigfoot. The whole time I'd never called it a Sasquatch. I'd said that it was a Bigfoot. And he said, "You think you really saw a Sasquatch?" I said, "I'm 100% positive that I saw a Sasquatch." He said, "No, you didn't." And he was blunt. "No, you didn't." I said, "Yeah, I did. I mean, I know what I saw, and I'm pretty confident that's what I saw." He said, "No, you're not understanding me. You did not see what you think you saw. And it would be in your best interest not to tell anyone else about what you think you saw." Which upset me quite a bit. You know, I'm not too tolerant to, someone telling me what I'm going to do. So I was like, well, I don't think that that's right. I know what I saw, and, I'm not, here to argue about it or anything. I know what I saw, and, he said, well, all I can tell you is be in your best interest if you forget the incident ever happened. I'm like, well, that's fine. I don't really want to go telling people that I supposedly shot a Bigfoot. It's not on my plans to go out in town and have a pep rally saying I killed shot a Bigfoot. And he said, well, it's best that you just keep it to yourself. And they turned around, got in their vehicle, and left.
Wow, so it kind of just forced you really to not talk about it.
He was pretty blunt. He was pretty blunt. I mean, he just implied that he didn't want me to speak about it. And for the last 10 years, the only person I ever told was my wife, and I told my father. And other than that, haven't told anyone else other than you're the third person that I've ever said anything to.
Well, the story is just amazing, and you hit on some things when you was talking about the track line, because I have found track lines.
Okay, so far I haven't interrupted this video at all like I had said I might do. I'm going to right here, though. These agents of an unknown government agency that he's describing have been described by multiple other witnesses now. I'm not sure if at the time there was anyone who had described these two, but a number of credible other witnesses have now described these two guys. The one who is a larger man that doesn't look like he works for the government, he's a little scruffy, and the shorter man who wears a suit and looks very clean cut, and they kind of play this good cop, bad cop kind of routine. And the big guy always tries to intimidate witnesses and tell them they're not going to talk about what they saw. And in other cases, they threaten a lot worse things, or a lot more directly, I should say. But yes, they do pop up over and over again in different eyewitness accounts, most of which you can tell had not heard this account or any other accounts involving those two when they were told. But it just adds a lot of credibility. Now, if you can't tell from the emotion in this guy's voice that he's telling the truth, and the way that he tells the story that he's telling the truth, I don't know what to tell you, but he's definitely telling the truth, as are many, many credible eyewitnesses who tell their stories, traumatize people, etc., etc. Okay, I'll let the video roll on now, or the count roll on now.
And you hit on some things that let me know that was a real track line, because they'll take the large strides, but then you also find it where they take a much shorter stride when they're just kind of, piddling around or whatever. I found that I found that myself.
Man, this thing, when I saw the first footprint, that I was on a four-wheeler trail, but it was at one time an old logging road. So the trail is a good, probably 6 or 7 foot wide. It's a nice four-wheeler trail. And this thing cleared that the first footprint was all the way on the left side of the trail. Okay? And that's why I never saw the second footprint at first. That's what had me so confused. I was just looking in terms of a human stride of where another footprint would be at. Is why at first I never saw the second footprint. But until I got up and I took about 3 strides and then just happened to look on the bank on the right side of the trail, there is the second footprint. It's not a whole footprint. Like I said, it was just the toes and the kind of the ball of the of the foot where it had, and it looked like it had jumped all the way across this damn trail. I mean, and it had to clear 8 foot in its stride.
Well,
And what bothered me though was the entire time I never saw a second set of footprints. There was 2 animals, and I never saw the second set of footprints.
Did you?
I don't know if the big one or the small one. I don't know which one had made it had to have been the big one, because the big one was in the little thicket, and the footprints were led to the little thicket.
Did you?
I don't know if the smaller one had come from the other direction, or had maybe come from another direction up the mountain.
Or it could have already been in the trees.
Right, it could have already been in the tree, but what it really scared me was it sounded like, I don't know if you've ever heard of a bear or a bear cub climb a tree.
Yeah, I've heard.
You could hear their claws really gripping the bark.
Right.
And that's what it sounded like. And that's what, I jumped back and I thought I was going to see a bear cub scurrying up this tree. But what I saw was a damn I don't know if it was 6 foot tall. But it's hard to judge because it was up in the air a good 12 or 15 feet. It was off the ground. So, I couldn't really judge his height that well. It looked to be about 6 foot tall, but it was it was muscular. It was heavy. It had a lot of fur. It was heavy hair on it. I don't know if it was because it was winter time, but it was heavy hair, heavy fur, long fur, and it wasn't. The hair didn't look like it didn't have like knots in it. Like a horse's mane gets sometimes. This hair looked like, not that it looked like it had been combed or anything, but it was not matted up real bad, or there wasn't briars or, burrs all knotted up in it. The hair looked clean.
Had you believed in Bigfoot or anything before this event?
Well, I'd really not believed in it. I was always kind of skeptical because I know how big the woods are. I spent a lot of time in the woods, and I've always thought, well, it could be out there. There's a lot of the woods that, especially out in the Pacific Northwest. There's just a vast amount of wilderness out there that no one's even stepped foot on.
Right.
Still to this day, that without a doubt, something could live out there without being discovered for a long time. But and there's all the time you hear reports, because I'm close to the Appalachian Trail. I'm probably within 10 miles of the Appalachian Trail from where I'm at. And then you always kind of hear stories and stuff of people that hike the Appalachian Trail that have said they've seen things hiking the trail or close to the trail. And I've always wondered around here, could there be one around here? But I found out the day before Thanksgiving on 2003. Yeah, they're here.
Let me ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind. Out of the 2 creatures, you've probably seen the bigger one, the larger one that was in the bush there. You've probably seen him better.
I saw him. He was far closer than the one in the tree.
Well, could you describe?
There was no doubt he was the male.
Could you describe his facial features for us?
He looked like a man. In the face, he was just, but his body was just so disproportionately large. His head looked bigger than a basketball. It was just, his head was massive. He had hair all over his face. Well, he didn't have hair on his nose. And he had a real, I remember seeing, when I looked at his eyes, he had like 3 or 4 wrinkles right at the bridge of his nose, and where the top of his nose and his forehead come together. There was like 3 or 4 distinct skin rolls in that, right there at his brow line. And his nose looked like a man's nose. It was, it didn't protrude it was more flat on his face, but it looked more like a human's nose. And his eyes, I could see his eyes as plain as day to this day. I mean, I looked at him square in the eyes, and his eyes were brown as mine are.
Was there any white in the eyes?
No, I saw no white in the eyes. His eyes were completely brown. I saw no white whatsoever. I saw no pupil in his eyes. His eyes looked completely brown.
Was you able to see any kind of like the teeth or anything like that?
I never saw no teeth. I could see his lips, so I saw his lips, and his mouth was extremely wide. I mean, it didn't look. I mean, I know he wasn't. I know the damn thing wasn't smiling at me.
Right.
It almost looked like he was smiling because his mouth was so wide.
Have you been back to that area?
Large.
Have you
I've been back several times.
Have
been
you?
back several times.
Not seen anything
I
else?
haven't seen anything, and I looked. Believe me, I looked. I mean, I looked. I didn't go back for probably a better part of. I hunted near there, within probably a half a mile the next season, but I haven't hunted directly right within a couple hundred yards of that area since then. No, I haven't been directly back to the area, but I've been within a quarter of a mile of where it happened, where I saw it.
People need to realize that they are out there.
It bothered me for the longest time that I shot it.
Well, I was going to ask you if you had remorse about shooting the one.
At the time, hell no. I didn't have no remorse. At the time, for lack of a better word, I came close to not only pissing my pants, but shitting my pants. I don't think that people can understand the fear that you feel when you encounter, because I was in not only I'm in the top of this mountain with not one but now two of these animals,
right,
within 50, both of these animals are within less than 50 yards of me. You realize, your brain tells you real quick that you're in a bad situation.
Right, your life could have been took away easily.
That's right. When that big one, when he come up out of that laurel thicket, I never seen nothing like that. People can't, until you actually see one, you cannot fathom how big they are. They're immense. His hands look like he had a Major League Baseball glove, outfielder baseball glove on his hand. His hand was that big.
Can I ask you a question about his feet?
Now, I didn't see much of his feet because he was still kind of in the laurel thicket.
How many toes?
And it's snow.
How many toes was on the tracks?
I didn't see. Well, there was 5 toes on the tracks.
5 toes.
The tracks looked identical to a human's footprint, except for just the side.
Because I know over time there've been some tracks that's been found with only 4 toes, and that's why
he had a big toe and 4 little toes.
Did you take any kind of pictures?
No, I didn't get any. I didn't have a camera or nothing with me because all I was going to find the cut in the rock where the deer had been crossing. I had no intentions of hunting. All I was going to do was walk that entire ridge until I found the cut in the rocks, so I could put a tree stand in it and catch that buck traveling across there. I had no intentions, but I never go in the woods without a gun. I've never, since I've been young. I've always, my father taught me, you don't go in the woods without some sort of protection. And I'll tell you, people can say, and one reason why, I thought about coming forward several times through the years and trying to make a report to people, but I had saw a story about a guy out in in California, Justin Sameha that had shot one. Or she just said he had shot one and then a little one.
Right.
And the ridicule that he had went through just by making that statement. You know, people were saying he was lying and he was making it up, and then something with the DNA was a bear. And I don't need that. I don't want that. I don't want no parts of that. You know.
Yeah, the Bigfoot world is pretty rough.
If people believe me, that's great. You know, if people don't believe me, that's great too. Have a nice day.
Well, I know for a fact that Bigfoot is a real creature.
I've always wondered if that animal died. Because it was a dead center mass. I know a 243 is not the heaviest caliber.
Right.
Yeah. But it